Maya Richardson's heels clicked rhythmically against the sidewalk as she power-walked toward the bus stop, expertly balancing her leather briefcase and her daily ritual, a cup of artisanal coffee from Joe's Corner Cafe. The morning sun painted the city in hues of gold, catching the subtle highlights in her perfectly pressed navy suit, a power outfit she'd chosen specifically for today's crucial presentation. The vintage scales of Justice pin on her lapel caught the light, bringing a smile to her face despite her rush. Her fingers instinctively reached up to touch it, remembering the day her grandmother had pressed it into her palm. "This belonged to your great-aunt Florence," her grandmother had said, eyes glistening with pride. "She was one of the first black female lawyers in this city. Wear it with pride, baby girl." The pin had seen Maya through law school, her first court appearance, and now, at 34, it was her lucky charm for every important presentation. The number 47 bus was just pulling up as Maya reached the stop, and she silently thanked her decision to wear her comfortable designer flats instead of the killer heels sitting in her office. Other commuters, all regular faces she'd seen but never really spoken to, waited in the usual morning queue. The young mother, who always carried a bright yellow diaper bag, a couple of college students with their oversized headphones, and the elderly gentleman who religiously read his morning paper. Maya boarded with practiced ease, tapping her transit pass and navigating the narrow aisle with the expertise of someone who'd made this journey hundreds of times. She chose her usual spot, 4th row from the front, right side. The perfect distance to exit quickly without seeming too eager to leave. The leather seat was cool against her silk blouse as she settled in, placing her coffee in the holder and pulling out her tablet to review her presentation one last time. A young mother boarded right after her, struggling slightly with a sleeping toddler wrapped in a bright blue blanket decorated with cartoon dinosaurs. The child's peaceful face brought another smile to Maya's lips. She'd been just like that once, her own mother always telling stories about how Maya could sleep through anything on their morning bus rides. The bus's interior was pristine, sunlight streaming through spotless windows and catching dust motes in its beam. The air conditioning hummed quietly, creating a pleasant atmosphere that smelled faintly of the fresh lemons the cleaning crew used every night. Maya inhaled deeply, letting the familiar scent calm her pre-presentation nerves. She opened her briefcase, extracting the folder containing hard copies of her proposal. Old school, yes, but she'd learned early in her career that technology could fail at the worst moments. The presentation outlined a new pro bono program for her law firm, something she'd been developing for months. If approved, it would provide legal assistance to small business owners in underserved communities, helping them navigate the complexities of business law. As she reviewed her notes, Maya caught fragments of quiet conversations around her, students discussing an upcoming exam, someone talking about last night's basketball game, the rustle of the elderly gentleman's newspaper. The gentle sway of the bus and the mundane morning chatter created a cocoon of normalcy that made her feel centered and ready for the day ahead. That's when the driver's voice crackled through the intercom, shattering the peaceful morning atmosphere. The harsh sound made the sleeping toddler stir, and Maya looked up from her papers, not yet realizing that this ordinary Tuesday morning was about to become anything but ordinary. The driver's eyes in the rearview mirror held something that Maya recognized all too well, a look she'd hoped was becoming relegated to history books rather than real life. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind once more. "Your dignity is not up for debate." Maya's fingers found the scales of Justice pin again, drawing strength from its familiar contours as she prepared to face whatever came next. "Ma'am in the blue suit," the driver's voice crackled again through the intercom, each word dripping with barely concealed contempt. "I'm going to need you to move to the back of the bus." Gerald Thompson adjusted his mirror, his weathered face set in stern lines as he watched Maya through the reflection. The bus remained idling at the stop, its engine humming in the morning quiet. Maya looked up from her presentation materials, her expression calm but questioning. In 15 years of riding this route, she'd never encountered this particular driver. His name tag caught the morning light. G. Thompson, 23 years of service, making her wonder how someone could serve the public for so long yet harbor such obvious prejudice. The young mother with the toddler tensed visibly, pulling her now stirring child closer. Their eyes met briefly, and Maya saw something familiar in the woman's gaze. The uncomfortable recognition of a moment they'd both experienced too many times before. The little boy blinked sleepily, his dinosaur blanket slipping slightly as he asked, "Mommy, why did the bus stop?" Around them, the usual morning silence transformed into a heavy, expectant quiet. The college students removed their headphones, the elderly gentleman lowered his newspaper, and even the perpetually distracted business people looked up from their phones. Maya felt their attention like a physical presence, but it didn't unnerve her. Years of courtroom experience had taught her the power of composure under pressure. "Sir," Maya responded, her voice clear and professional, carrying easily through the bus without raising it. "I'm comfortable where I am. Thank you. There are plenty of available seats throughout the bus." She gestured to the numerous empty spots, her movement deliberate and calm. The scales of Justice Pin caught the light again, seeming to wink encouragement. Thompson's face reddened as he twisted in his seat to face her directly. "Those front seats are reserved," he insisted, though no signs indicated any such policy. "I need you to move to the back now, or we won't be going anywhere this morning." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Maya glanced at her watch, 8:23 a.m. Her presentation wasn't until 10 o'clock, but this delay would make her late for her prep meeting with the partners. Still, her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "Some things matter more than meetings, Maya. Some moments define not just us, but the world we want to create." The young mother shifted in her seat, then spoke up softly. "Sir, I ride this route every day. There aren't any reserved seats." Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued, "I'm sitting right here with my son, and we're all just trying to get to work and school." Through the large windows, Maya noticed other passengers at the bus stop beginning to show signs of impatience. A woman in scrubs checked her watch repeatedly, while a man in construction gear shifted from foot to foot. Yet Thompson remained fixed in his position, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Maya took a deep breath, centered herself, and opened her briefcase again. With deliberate movements, she extracted her business card and stood, her posture straight but non-threatening. "Mr. Thompson," she began, walking to the front of the bus with measured steps, "I'm an attorney with Davis and Chen. Here's my card. I'd be happy to discuss the transit authority's actual seating policies with you, or we could contact your supervisor for clarification." The card lay on the driver's panel, embossed letters catching the morning light. Maya Richardson, Senior Associate, Civil Rights Division. Several passengers murmured in appreciation of her professional approach, and someone near the back began recording with their phone. Thompson's face cycled through several emotions: anger, uncertainty, and something that might have been fear. But before he could respond, a distinctive gold-striped Transit Authority SUV pulled alongside the bus, its lights flashing quietly. Maya noticed it in her peripheral vision, but kept her attention on Thompson, whose eyes had now widened in recognition of what was about to unfold. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, highlighting dust motes in the air, and the growing resolve on the faces of the passengers. This moment, Maya realized, was about more than just one woman refusing to move to the back of a bus. It was about every person who had ever stayed silent, and every person who had finally decided to speak up. Colonel James Matthews had seen enough. Rising slowly from his seat, his military bearing evident in every movement, he adjusted his jacket with the Marine Corps pin prominently displayed. At 68, he carried himself with the same dignity he'd maintained through 3 decades of service, his silver hair and distinguished bearing commanding immediate attention. "Son," he addressed the driver, his deep voice resonating through the bus with quiet authority. "I spent 35 years of my life defending this country's principles. That includes the right of every American to sit wherever they choose." His words, measured and clear, drew subtle nods from other passengers. What you're doing here isn't just wrong. It's against everything we stand for." The college student who had been recording, Angela Chen, stepped forward, her phone steady in her hands. "I'm live streaming this for my journalism class," she announced, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. "We're studying ethical reporting and civil rights in the modern era. I think this qualifies as a primary source." She moved to stand beside Maya, her presence both supportive and purposeful. Through the large tinted windows, the Transit Authority SUV's gold stripe gleamed in the morning sun. Inside it, Supervisor Sandra Chen was already reviewing the real-time footage from the bus's internal cameras on her tablet. 20 years in Transit Authority management had taught her to handle situations like this swiftly and decisively. The young mother, who had earlier spoken up, gathered her courage again. "My name is Sarah," she said, standing with her toddler balanced on her hip. "And my son needs to get to daycare so I can get to my nursing shift. But more importantly," she paused, making eye contact with Maya, "my son needs to see that standing up for what's right matters more than staying quiet when things are wrong." Thompson's hands fidgeted on the steering wheel as he watched the scene unfold in his mirror. The presence of the Transit Authority vehicle hadn't escaped his notice, and beads of sweat had begun to form on his forehead. His voice, when he spoke again, had lost its earlier authority. "I'm just trying to maintain order on my bus," he said, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. A businessman in the back, who had been quietly observing, raised his hand. "Point of order," he said, his legal background evident in his terminology. "I ride this route 3 times a week. There's no policy about reserved seats except for the clearly marked handicap section." He held up his phone, displaying the Transit Authority's official regulations page. "I'm happy to read the relevant sections aloud." Maya remained standing, her composure unshaken. The scales of justice pin on her lapel caught the morning light, seeming to underscore the significance of the moment. She noticed more phones being raised, more passengers finding their voices. This wasn't just her stand anymore. It had become a collective moment of conscience. Through the front window, they could see Supervisor Chen approaching, her clipboard tucked under one arm and her tablet displaying the live feed in her other hand. Her expression was professional but determined, her pace purposeful. The gold badge on her uniform reflected the morning sun, matching the stripe on her vehicle. Colonel Matthews moved to stand beside Maya, his presence steady and reassuring. "In my experience," he said, addressing everyone yet no one in particular, "the true measure of justice isn't just in big courtroom decisions. It's in these everyday moments when ordinary people choose to do the right thing." Angela Chen's live stream had already attracted hundreds of viewers, her journalism professor among them. The comments section filled with messages of support and encouragement, creating a virtual community of witnesses to this morning's small but significant stand for dignity. As Supervisor Chen reached for the bus door, Maya felt a subtle shift in the air. This moment would be different from others she'd experienced. The collective energy of the passengers, the presence of cameras, the official witness approaching, all of it suggested that perhaps today, justice wouldn't just be an aspiration, but a reality delivered in real time. The door hissed open, and Supervisor Chen stepped up, her badge gleaming. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny witnesses to history in the making. In that moment, before Chen could even speak, everyone on the bus knew that change was about to arrive. Right on schedule. Supervisor Sandra Chen stepped onto the bus with the quiet confidence of someone who had handled countless transit situations over her 20-year career. Yet something about this morning felt different. The energy on the bus, the united passengers, the phones recording. This wasn't just another incident to document. This was an opportunity for meaningful change. "Good morning," Chen announced, her voice carrying naturally through the bus. "I'm Supervisor Chen from Transit Authority Operations." She turned to Thompson, whose complexion had shifted from red to pale. "Driver Thompson, please turn off your engine and hand me your ID badge." The air conditioning hummed to a stop, leaving a pregnant silence broken only by the soft cooing of Sarah's toddler, who was now contentedly playing with his dinosaur toy. Chen's tablet displayed multiple camera angles of the incident, the high-definition footage leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Ms. Richardson," Chen continued, recognizing Maya from various community legal events, "would you please share your experience?" She pulled out her tablet stylus, ready to document everything. The morning sun streaming through the windows created a natural spotlight on the scene unfolding at the front of the bus. Maya spoke with measured clarity, her legal training evident in her precise recounting of events. "At approximately 8:15 a.m., I boarded this bus using my monthly pass. I selected a seat in the 4th row, and at approximately 8:23 a.m., driver Thompson attempted to force me to relocate to the back of the bus, citing non-existent reserved seating policies." Colonel Matthews stepped forward, his military bearing adding gravity to his words. "Supervisor Chen, I'd like to add my testimony to the record. What I witnessed here today was a clear violation of not only transit authority policies, but the basic principles of human dignity." Angela Chen, still live streaming, provided her perspective. "I have the entire incident recorded, beginning from the first announcement. My journalism professor is watching the stream and has already offered to provide expert testimony on the documentation if needed." Her phone screen showed the viewer count climbing past 1,000. Sarah, the young nurse, spoke up again, her toddler now fully awake and watching the proceedings with curious eyes. "I ride this route every day with my son, Derek. There has never been any policy about reserved seating except for the clearly marked handicapped section. What happened today was—" She paused, looking at her son, a teaching moment about right and wrong. Supervisor Chen nodded, her stylus moving efficiently across the tablet surface. "Mr. Thompson," she turned to the driver, who sat rigid in his seat, "this isn't the first complaint we've received about similar behavior on your routes. We've documented 3 previous incidents in the past month alone." The businessman who had cited the regulations earlier raised his hand. "If I may, Supervisor," he began, "I'm a contract law attorney, and I'd be happy to provide a statement regarding the transit authority's published policies and how today's actions constitute a clear violation of both policy and public trust." Thompson's shoulders slumped as he slowly removed his ID badge. The morning sun caught the 23 years of service engraving, a career's worth of time that now hung in the balance because of deep-seated prejudices he couldn't let go. Maya watched the scene unfold with mixed emotions. Her grandmother's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "Sometimes, baby girl, justice isn't about punishment, it's about transformation." She stepped forward, her scales of justice pin catching the light. "Supervisor Chen," Maya said, drawing everyone's attention, "while this incident requires appropriate administrative action, perhaps it also presents an opportunity. Our law firm has been developing a community education program about civil rights and public services. This could be a catalyst for systemic change rather than just punitive measures." Chen's eyes lit up with interest. The Transit Authority had been seeking ways to improve their community relations and driver training programs. As she made final notes on her tablet, she noticed how the morning sun had shifted, creating a warm glow throughout the bus. Somehow, it felt like more than coincidence, as if the light itself was illuminating a path forward. The passengers, who had become unexpected participants in this morning's stand for dignity, watched in respectful silence. Each person knew they were witnessing not just the end of an incident, but the beginning of something more significant. Through the windows, the city continued its morning bustle, unaware that on this ordinary bus, an extraordinary transformation was taking place. Supervisor Chen cleared her throat, her tablet now filled with witness statements and time-stamped documentation. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting long rectangles of light across the bus's interior. She addressed the passengers with the practiced ease of someone who understood that moments like these could define a community. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying authority without aggression, "I want to thank you all for your patience and cooperation. The transit authority takes these matters extremely seriously. She turned to Maya, who stood composed despite the morning's disruption. Ms. Richardson, would you be willing to participate in a formal review of our policies and training procedures? Maya's response was immediate and measured. Of course. My firm would be honored to assist in developing a more comprehensive training program. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew several business cards, handing them to Chen. In fact, this aligns perfectly with our community outreach initiative. Angela Chen, still recording but now from a respectful distance, raised her hand. Supervisor Chen, my journalism professor has sent a message. She's offering to contribute media ethics training to your program, focusing on how public servants can better understand their roles in our diverse community. Colonel Matthews stepped forward, his military bearing softening as he addressed the group. If I may add, I lead veteran support groups that focus on community service. Many of our members would be excellent candidates for positions within the transit system. People who understand the value of serving all citizens equally. Sarah, adjusting her now fully awake toddler on her hip, spoke up. As a nurse at City General, I see how transportation issues affect healthcare access. Maybe we could integrate public health perspectives into your training. Little Derek waved his dinosaur toy in apparent agreement, drawing gentle laughter from the passengers. Thompson sat quietly in his seat, his expression shifting from defensive to contemplative as he listened to the constructive suggestions flowing around him. The badge in his hands, representing 23 years of service, seemed to weigh heavily in his palms. Mr. Thompson, Maya said, surprising everyone by addressing him directly, would you be willing to share your perspective on how we could make the transit system more welcoming for everyone? The offer hung in the air, a bridge extended across a divide that had seemed uncrossable moments before. After a long pause, Thompson spoke, his voice roughened with emotion. I've been driving these routes for over 2 decades. Maybe it's time I learned some new ways of seeing things. He looked up, meeting Maya's eyes in the mirror for the first time without hostility. I have stories that might help other drivers understand why change is necessary. Supervisor Chen nodded approvingly, making additional notes on her tablet. The Transit Authority is implementing a new community advisory board. This incident has made it clear that we need diverse perspectives to move forward effectively. She looked around the bus, taking in the varied faces of the passengers who had become unexpected architects of change. The businessman who had cited regulations earlier raised his hand again. I'd be happy to review the legal framework for any new policies. Pro bono, of course. He smiled, adjusting his tie. Sometimes the best laws come from moments like these. Through the windows, the city continued its morning rhythm, unaware of the transformation taking place within this single bus. The sun now reached every corner of the vehicle, as if nature itself was underlining the transparency needed in public service. Angela's live-stream comments continued to flow, many offering support and sharing similar experiences. Her professor had already begun outlining a case study on how community intervention could lead to positive institutional change. We'll need a follow-up meeting to coordinate all these initiatives, Supervisor Chen announced, her professional demeanor warmed by genuine optimism. This could be the beginning of real transformation in our transit system. Maya touched her grandmother's pin, feeling its familiar contours under her fingers. What had started as a confrontation was blossoming into something her grandmother could never have imagined. A collaborative effort to prevent such incidents from happening again. The morning's tension had transformed into purposeful energy, filling the bus with the kind of hope that comes when people choose to turn conflict into opportunity. Through the windows, the city seemed brighter somehow, as if reflecting the change beginning to take root in the hearts and minds of everyone present. The next hour unfolded with the kind of efficiency that comes when people unite for a common purpose. Supervisor Chen had arranged for a replacement driver, a cheerful woman named Patricia Williams, who arrived within minutes of being called. As the original passengers reboarded, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere. Strangers who had witnessed something meaningful together were now exchanging smiles and contact information. Maya glanced at her watch. 9:15 a.m. Her morning presentation would need to be rescheduled, but her law firm's managing partner had already sent a supportive text after seeing Angela's viral live stream. Take all the time you need. This is exactly the kind of community engagement we want to champion. Sarah, the nurse, was organizing a WhatsApp group for the passengers who wanted to stay involved in the transit reform initiative. Her son Derek had become the unofficial mascot of the morning, his dinosaur toy now sporting a hastily made paper badge that read Junior Transit Officer, courtesy of Angela's artistic skills. Ms. Richardson, Colonel Matthews approached, his military bearing now relaxed but dignified. I've made some calls to the Veterans Employment Network. They're excited about the possibility of a partnership with the Transit Authority. Many of our veterans have experience with diverse communities and crisis management. Angela's livestream had evolved into an impromptu forum for community dialogue. Comments poured in from across the city, sharing similar experiences and offering solutions. Her journalism professor had already scheduled a special class session to discuss the morning's events as a case study in civic engagement and responsible reporting. Look at this, Sarah called out, showing her phone to the group. Local news outlets had picked up the story, but instead of focusing on the conflict, they were highlighting the constructive response and community collaboration. The headline read, Transit Incident Sparks Innovative Community Partnership Program. Supervisor Chen moved efficiently through the bus, gathering contact information and distributing official transit authority cards with her direct line. We're scheduling our first community advisory board meeting for next week, she announced. The authority's executive director wants to fast-track these reforms. The businessman who had offered legal assistance was deep in conversation with another passenger, a graphic designer who had stayed quiet during the initial conflict, but was now enthusiastically sketching ideas for an awareness campaign. Simple posters, she explained, showing her tablet, reminding everyone that public transit means everyone. Maya felt a gentle tug on her sleeve. It was Derek, offering her his beloved dinosaur toy. For justice, he said solemnly, clearly repeating something he'd heard, but making it endearing in his toddler pronunciation. Sarah beamed with pride as Maya knelt to accept the toy with appropriate ceremony. Through the windows, the city seemed different somehow, not physically changed, but viewed through new eyes. The morning sun highlighted the diverse faces of people at bus stops, each with their own stories, their own journeys, all deserving of dignity and respect. Thompson, who had remained quietly reflective, approached Maya before departing. Ms. Richardson, he began, his voice heavy with realization. My grandfather was a bus driver too, back in the 60s. He used to tell me stories about those times, but I never thought. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Maybe those stories need to be part of our training, not to shame, but to show how far we've come and how far we still need to go. Patricia, the new driver, had already demonstrated a different approach. She greeted each passenger with a warm smile, helped an elderly man with his walker, and announced each stop with genuine enthusiasm. This is how we build community, she said during a brief break. One journey at a time. As the bus finally resumed its route, Maya touched her grandmother's pin once more. The morning's events had shown that change was possible, not through confrontation alone, but through the collective will of people choosing to stand together for what's right. The city rolled by outside, its familiar streets somehow fresher, full of possibility. In her mind, Maya began drafting ideas for the new training program, imagining how this single morning could ripple outward into lasting change. Sometimes, she realized, justice arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet determination of people choosing to do better together. 1 week later, Maya stood in the Transit Authority's main conference room, her grandmother's scales of justice pin catching the fluorescent light as she reviewed the proposals spread across the polished table. What had started as a tense morning on a city bus had catalyzed into something remarkable. The room buzzed with energy as representatives from various community organizations filtered in for the first official meeting of the Transit Equality Initiative. Sarah, still in her nursing scrubs from an early shift, had brought data about transportation barriers facing hospital patients. Derek, now officially the initiative's youngest consultant, sat contentedly in a corner with his dinosaur toy, which had gained a companion, a small model bus courtesy of Patricia Williams. Angela Chen's documentary, A Morning That Moved Us, played silently on a screen in the corner. Her journalism class project had evolved into a powerful testimony of community action, already selected for showing at 3 civil rights film festivals. The comment section of her original livestream had become an informal forum for sharing similar stories and solutions. The Veterans Program is already showing promise, Colonel Matthews reported, pointing to a chart. We've had 35 applications for driver positions and 15 for management roles. These are people who understand the importance of serving all communities with respect. His military precision had proven invaluable in organizing the initiative's various components. Supervisor Chen entered with Thompson, who had requested to be part of the solution. After a week of soul-searching, he had volunteered to share his perspective in training sessions. It's not just about what we did wrong, he explained to the group. It's about understanding why change matters and how we can do better. The businessman, now introduced properly as James Morrison, civil rights attorney, presented the legal framework for the new policies. We're not just changing rules, he said, adjusting his reading glasses. We're creating a model that other cities can follow. Several transit authorities have already reached out for guidance. Through the conference room's wide windows, they could see buses moving through the city streets below. Each one now bore a small but significant addition, a rainbow-colored stripe above the transit authority's traditional gold band, symbolizing the diversity of the community they served. The graphic designer's simple concept had resonated deeply with city officials. Maya's law firm had fully embraced the initiative, allocating pro bono hours and resources to ensure its success. This isn't just about transit, her managing partner had said. This is about building the kind of city we want to live in. The firm's community outreach program had doubled in size, inspired by the positive changes sprouting from that morning's Stand for Dignity. Sarah's WhatsApp group had grown into a formal community advisory board, with representatives from various neighborhoods meeting regularly to discuss transportation needs. Her son Derek had become something of a mascot for the program, his innocent questions about fairness often cutting straight to the heart of complex issues. Patricia Williams, whose warm approach to driving had earned her commendations, was now leading driver training sessions. It's simple, she would say. Treat each passenger like their family, because in this city they are. Her sessions always ended with drivers sharing their own stories of meaningful passenger interactions. Local businesses had joined the initiative, offering support in unexpected ways. Coffee shops near bus stops provided free coffee to drivers who completed the new training program. A local tech company developed an app for reporting positive driver interactions, shifting the focus from complaints to commendations. As Maya reviewed the progress reports, she noticed a small detail that brought tears to her eyes. The Transit Authority had quietly renamed their main training facility after her grandmother, Florence Richardson. For those who showed us the way, the dedication plaque read, and those who carry their legacy forward. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the conference room floor. In a corner, Derek played with his toys, creating his own little world where buses and dinosaurs coexisted peacefully. His mother watched him with pride, knowing he was growing up in a city that was learning, changing, and striving to be better. Maya touched her grandmother's pin, feeling its familiar contours under her fingers. Sometimes, she realized, the biggest changes start with the smallest stands for dignity, and sometimes justice arrives not in grand gestures, but in the quiet determination of ordinary people choosing to make a difference, one bus ride at a time. 3 months after that transformative morning, Maya stood at a podium in City Hall's Grand Assembly Room, her grandmother's scales of justice pin gleaming under the ceremonial lights. The room was filled to capacity for the official launch of the Transit for All initiative, a comprehensive program that had grown far beyond its origins on a single city bus. Change, Maya began, looking out at the diverse faces before her, often arrives in unexpected moments. 3 months ago, I was just trying to get to work. Today, we're witnessing how one moment of standing for dignity can transform an entire community. Her voice carried clearly through the historic chamber, strong with purpose. In the front row, Sarah sat with Derek, now sporting a miniature transit authority uniform that had become the unofficial symbol of the youth education program. His dinosaur toy, still wearing its junior transit officer badge, had inspired a citywide educational campaign featuring Rex the Rights Ranger, teaching children about respect and dignity on public transportation. Angela Chen, now an acclaimed student journalist, had set up her camera to document the ceremony. Her original footage had become part of the city's official training materials, but more importantly, it had sparked similar initiatives in cities across the country. Her professor beamed proudly from the audience as Angela received a Civic Journalism Award for her role in documenting positive social change. Colonel Matthews stood with a group of newly graduated transit officers, all veterans who had completed the specialized training program. Their presence had already made a noticeable difference in how the transit system handled challenging situations, bringing military precision and human compassion to their roles. Patricia Williams, recently promoted to head of driver training, shared statistics that brought tears to many eyes. Complaints were down 70%, rider satisfaction had increased by 85%, and the number of positive driver-passenger interaction reports had quadrupled. "We're not just moving people," she said during her presentation. "We're moving hearts and minds." Thompson, who had chosen to retire from driving, now worked part-time as a community liaison, sharing his journey of transformation with new drivers. "Sometimes," he told them, "our greatest service comes from admitting we need to change." His honest testimonials had become powerful tools for breaking down barriers and fostering understanding. The businessman, James Morrison, had expanded his pro bono practice to focus exclusively on public transportation equity. His firm's waiting room was decorated with framed news articles about the initiative, each one telling a story of positive change rippling through the community. Supervisor Chen presented the results of the 3-month pilot program. Every bus in the city now had a community liaison officer. Driver training included extensive cultural competency modules, and a new mobile app allowed passengers to easily connect with transit resources and support. The golden stripe on city buses had been joined by a rainbow of colors, each representing a commitment to serving every member of their diverse community. Maida's law firm had seen unexpected benefits from their involvement. Other companies, inspired by their commitment to community engagement, had created similar programs. The ripple effect had touched everything from healthcare access to education, as organizations recognized the vital role of dignified public transportation in creating an equitable society. Sarah's WhatsApp group had evolved into a formal advisory council, with representatives from every city district. Derek, their unofficial mascot, had inspired a children's book series about inclusion and respect, with proceeds funding transportation passes for underprivileged students. As Maya concluded her speech, she shared a personal touch that brought the journey full circle. "My grandmother once told me that justice moves like a bus through the city. It needs drivers, passengers, and most importantly, people willing to stand up and say, 'This is where we need to go.'" She touched the scales of Justice Pin, now accompanied by a small replica of the rainbow-striped city bus. "Today, we're all choosing our direction together." The afternoon sun streamed through City Hall's historic windows, casting a warm glow over the assembly. Outside, buses moved through the city streets, each one carrying stories, dreams, and the promise of dignity for every passenger. The city had changed, not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through the quiet determination of ordinary people choosing to make each journey matter. As the ceremony concluded, Derek waved his dinosaur toy in celebration, its junior transit officer badge catching the light. In that moment, everyone present understood that they weren't just celebrating a program or an initiative. They were witnessing the beginning of a legacy it would carry forward, one bus ride at a time, into a future where dignity and respect weren't just destinations, but the very essence of the journey itself.